In this lesson, let's get started with rendering our controller. So we can start by importing the assembly. Let's go to the desktop. And here's our assembly. I want to make sure everything is the same. I just like to keep this as keep original. Snap to ground. And there it is. So just for the sake of the rendering, I always like to move the controller up a bit to make it look like it's floating. Gives it a nice effect. And let's throw a nice background on here. So for the environment, I'm going to choose 3 panels. And for the background, let's try white. Not bad. Every now and then I'll throw in a nice color just to help make the object pop. So if you try orange, it's a little bit more game inspired. And for the materials, let's do black gloss for the body. You can see if I add the same color to different parts, we see that reflected here as the same material but in 2 different places. But let's just say I make this a different color and I decide, oh, I want to go back to black. So if I drag this back over to this part, you'll see I only still have one black part here, but one color is controlling both of them. So just make sure you keep that in mind when adding materials to make sure that you don't have a ton of different parts all the same color if one can control all the parts. So let's continue. So these are our side grips, so let's make them have a nice texture. Let's choose a black matte. Looks pretty good. If you want even more texture, we could use rubber, which is under the plastic settings. We could do the same thing for over here. Not bad. Let's give the joysticks a rubber texture as well. And for these buttons, let's go with black paint. So I think the controller needs a little bit of color, so I think what might be interesting is to have an interesting texture base. And in KeyShot, what's nice is that you can add a textured material and it's only going to affect it visually. It doesn't affect the geometry. So if we go under plastic and choose a hard rough material, you can see it changed both because one was controlling the other. So if we want to fix this, we can right click and unlink and then add a new material. If you double click on the part, you actually can bring up your properties and we can control the roughness here. So that should make it look a little bit more rough there. We can also add textures here. Change the refraction index a little bit. That gives us a little more highlights on this part. brighten this up a little bit, make it more saturated. And for the last step, let's add some lights to these buttons here. So I'm going to make them a little bit more amber colored. We can do that by changing the intensity. And then we can adjust the color here. If you want, we can make this even more realistic by adding a clear material. Like so. And it almost gives a hint that there are lights on underneath. So I'm going to make one more adjustment. Change this color just slightly. It looks pretty good. Now time for the render. Let's pick a good angle to render this. And you can adjust the camera a little bit. I like to increase the perspective just a little bit. Let's make it a little more dynamic. And I'm going to start the render. When we come back, we should have a fully rendered image. So there we have it. Finally rendered controller. Looks pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed going through these lessons with me and that you learned a lot more about product design, ergonomics, and SOLIDWORKS. Thanks for watching.